Okay, sounds good.
There we go.
Great. Well, let me go ahead and pop up my screen here, and we'll get going. Well, thanks again for having me today. This is a fun topic of mine. Um, I think you'll see that come out a little bit. This topic in particular for me has been the topic that has, goodness, taken up almost every day my last two or 3 years now. This topic, I would say, is really a great way to leverage conversations, to start conversations with business owners, given that so much has changed over the past few years. And we'll dive into some of those changes and ways to approach business owners given those changes. But a few things just to kick us off. I am a bit of a tax geek myself. So a little bit about me. I work in Nationwide's Advanced Consulting Group. I'm one of the attorneys on staff there, and I mainly focus on business tax, business planning, and then a little odd niche of agricultural planning. So we'll talk through some tax things today. We won't get too deep because I do know it's a Thursday morning, at least not recorded, it's a Thursday morning. So know that some of the things we'll talk through, not necessarily everything will apply to everybody, but there's certain levers out there that we'll talk through that may apply. So with that, I thought I'd kick things off with why is this such a hot topic? Why have this discussion with your folks or with your potential prospects as well? These tend to be the top 3 reasons why I think it's been such a hot topic, such a hot button. And I'm sure you've experienced at least some of these as well. So the first one, and this one comes up quite a bit. First one for me is I used to have folks come to me and say, Ryan, I've got a business client. And I think they're going to be ready to sell their business maybe the next 6 or so years. They want to start doing some planning today to get ready for that. That conversation has really shifted to, I've got a client that is selling their business next month. They are ready to be out. What can we do for them? They're a little worried about taxes. So that shift, that turn in how quickly folks are ready to just depart from their business has really accelerated their plans, and it's really made our job as advisors, as consultants. We have to be so tactical in what we offer and how we help our advisors or our clients make sure that they're offering the things that are going to be the most impactful for them. We used to have a lot of levers, a lot of time, a lot of different ways we could kind of stretch the tax game. Now we're down to being very precise. So very interesting on the acceleration that a lot of business owners have. The other one that I think is just very fascinating, and I'm sure everybody has experienced this too. If I could see you, I'm sure I could get some hands on this one, but how many folks out there, and I know I used to actually have a bottle of this, how many folks actually had a bottle of hand sanitizer made from a distillery? That's pretty wild, pretty wild, right? It's crazy. We went from making tequila to making hand sanitizer. It's just a wild shift in your business. We're back to tequila, so thumbs up, things are on the up and up. But think of that from a value perspective. You had a certain set of inputs, you had a certain distribution path, a certain group of suppliers, all the same things, a certain set of manufacturing equipment. Now you've shifted. You've shifted to a new distribution model, you've shifted to a new set of supplies potentially, and now we're somewhat back in the middle. Maybe folks like hand sanitizer made from tequila. Maybe you keep some of that. But those changes to businesses are across the board. I'm sure everybody's experienced restaurants. Everybody used to have kind of the cheesecake menu, cheesecake restaurant menu where it was 40 pages long. Now it's 1 page. So big changes, and all these changes are really affecting businesses across the board. So given those changes, it's very important to let folks know, I know you've made some significant changes to your business. Have you thought about how that's impacted the value of your business coming out of the pandemic? And have you thought about how to cover that additional risk? Because most businesses that made changes actually went up in value. So very interesting. Even restaurants, a lot of restaurants that I've seen have actually gone up in value. So really interesting. The next one though, and I would say if you're going to jot down a few things, this is one of them. this in particular has been my kind of golden ticket into the business space, and it is related to all of the pandemic funding that was out there over the past 2 or so years. We still have some items being pushed, but the big one for me was PPP loans. Nearly every small or closely held business received PPP funds, and those funds are pretty unique. We all know that they were generally forgiven for most individuals, but what's really unique about this group of funds is it didn't really act as a way to keep the lights on or keep the doors open. What I've seen with most businesses, nearly all businesses, is that those funds, they actually work to clean up a bad strategy that wasn't going well for them, or pay off some debt that they just couldn't get out of, or maybe buy out a business partner that they just really were trying and struggling to get out of that relationship. So for us, when we look at how did those funds change value, it certainly did. But I would say the kind of golden ticket with this is everybody that received one of those funds had to go to a bank. So if you partner with a local lender, if you partner with that business banker, ask them if they've offered to their to their clients, the folks that participated with this program, the PPP program, because I'm sure they have a list. Say, have you offered them an informal valuation given their participation with the PPP program? And if they haven't, geez, talk about a great way to add a value add service to what they're offering to those clients that receive the PPP loans, and for you as well. I mean, that's a great win, a great lead in, and that's a pre-made list too. All those folks that have PPP funds, geez, talk about a service add that you can offer there. So those are my top 3 whys. But what I thought I would do is show you quickly a picture of what I looked like with hair a couple years ago. No, I thought I would pull back the curtain with you, show you a little bit of behind the scenes, what goes into a evaluation, show you some of the behind the scenes things. So I thought I'd start off with, who's a good fit for this type of program, for this type of process. Really all businesses are, but these tend to be the top 3 that I see most often. So manufacturing, we talked about that already. You shifted from tequila to hand sanitizer, now you're back. Big changes in that space. A really interesting fact too that these folks are dealing with. I saw, it's probably been a month ago now, but one fact that I know these manufacturers are struggling with is the cost of transportation. I saw a post recently that said a entry-level truck driver for Walmart is being paid $110,000. So I will be packing up from here, heading and getting my CDL license. It's wild though. Think about how that affects manufacturing. Maybe they shift their distribution model. So a lot of big changes that they've experienced and continue to experience as well. So certainly a need there. Construction. This group has been probably the largest growth group. Everybody had to have a home office. Everybody had to have home projects done. Another really big one that's driving demand significantly is this past year, almost a year ago now, the government passed the infrastructure bill. And that, if you didn't see that, that one is $1.2 trillion that's going to be heading into the economy over the next several years. But what's interesting about that is about half of it, 550 billion, is actually going towards what I would deem as infrastructure. So roadways, bridges, waterways, electric grid, things like that. So think of that from your construction groups that you may partner with or want to partner with. They are certainly going to see an increase in their value, given their ability to win some of these contracts. Because to me, if I'm valuing a company, government funds feel a little different than, say, private funds or commercial funds. Government funds tend to have a little more sticking power when it comes to consistency of payments. So they're certainly going to see an increase in their value. But the groups that I've talked to that are in this space, they have told me, they said, no, I know my value is going to go up. I'm ready to take on that risk. The thing that scares me the most is the grass looks a lot greener. I've got some key folks that bid on projects. there's no reason why they shouldn't go out and start a competing firm. So I need, as a business owner, I need to be thinking of ways to retain and recruit the key talent. Otherwise, I'm going to have to pay a heck of a lot of money to replace somebody if I can even find somebody. So really interesting there. It's more of a focus on the employee as opposed to the actual rise in the value of the business. The last one is service-based professionals. So doctors, dentists, lawyers, kind of across the board. If you have a skill set, this group has been very, very active in either expanding their operations or they're saying, I am ready to be out. Find me somebody. Let's ride off into the sunset. It's a really interesting group, and oddly enough, a big group, and maybe you've experienced this too, are financial advisory practices, P&C groups, employee benefits groups. This group in particular, if you haven't seen some of the quotes or some of the offers that are going on out there, very, very interesting. I used to say that, financial advisory practices, you might get a year, maybe a year and a half to 2 years worth of revenue from your book. Today, there's groups out there that are offering, if you meet their standards, they're offering 5.5 times. That's wild. So very interesting groups to see what will happen with that. And certainly there where we can help out too. The last thing that I would say, who's a good fit, is look for folks with either a revenue of 1.5 million if they're more of that service-based type of business, or if they have more of those physical assets that they need, look to 500,000 of book value or greater. Those two metrics really help to make sure that you're not just offering the service, you're offering a service that they can actually implement some of the suggestions that you come back to them with. So whether that's updating their buy-sell and they need to spend some money with the attorney, or it's a financial product that they can use and leverage for some risk mitigation, they've got the cash flow to do so. So those two metrics, focus on those when you're looking for prospects as well. Those will be good to keep you in the mix as well. So with that, now we know why is it important, who to go after, how do we actually do the process. This is it. There's 2 things that I would need from you. And I've left a little bit of mystery because the fact finder that you see on the right section here, there's actually a backside to it. So a little bit of mystery there, but really I don't ask a lot of you or anybody else that's going to partner with you to help gather some of the documents. I would really be looking at, tell me a little bit about the business, what they'd like to have happen, and as specific as you can be in the industry that they are in. So if they're in construction, do they build roadways or do they do framing of houses? Let me know and I'll give them a better, more tailored approach to their value. And aside from that, it's really, let me know if there's anything goofy on their financials. So outside of the pandemic, obviously, but I say they have fair, real estate within the business. What's the actual value as opposed to what they're telling the government? Certainly going to be different in most cases. So let me know those things. And otherwise, a few years of their taxes and we're off to the races. If you can send those items in, we're going to dive through a little bit of what that looks like on our end when we review them. But if you can send them in to us in good order, we've got, say, 2019, 2020, 2021, we'll be able to get something back to you within about 2 to 3 days. If you've got them hot, we want to keep them hot for you. So I want to show you what it looks like on our end because, gosh, it's a Thursday morning and what would we do without a look at a tax return? But the reason I wanted to show you this is because the valuation, the value of a business is one thing, but the value is only as good as the amount you get to keep as the business owner. So some of the things that we do that may be a little different than, from other groups out there is we're going to look at ways to help secure that walkaway number and help maximize that walkaway number. And one of those is as simple as this little top right box. This little box, I actually had a client come through almost a year ago now. He was selling his business for right around 140 million. It was a financial technology type of business. And he came to us as kind of the doctor's double check. Am I missing anything? My team feels pretty confident with everything they've offered. Just want to make sure. This little top right box, for him specifically, he was a C Corp. This little box leads to a conversation around what they call QSBS or 1202 stock, if you've heard of that. If you're incorporated after a certain date, you can qualify based on a couple of other things. You can qualify when you sell your business to not pay tax on up to $10 million of capital gains. That's pretty significant. So his team said, sure, you qualify. That made us feel good that they offered that as well. But we said, you're also married and you've got 2 kids. They look like and smell like founders to me too of this business. So we ended up getting him from about $10 million of exclusion up to 40 million. That alone, just from that little box, looking at that little box, that alone was about $11 million back in his pocket this past year. That pays for everything we want to talk about. Repositioning it from the IRS back to him, allowed him to do estate planning, allowed him to do buy-sell planning, key person, executive bonus, all those things that he wanted to have a conversation about, all covered. So that little box, things like that, we're going to let you know. The other one that I think is just hilarious that the IRS actually named it this, it's called guilty. Of all things, you could pull something out, it's called guilty. But that one, and then there's a couple of others too, are really around where you sell your goods. So do I have a domestic company or do I sell internationally for a lot of my goods? You might be surprised, but a lot of folks that qualify for this are actually farmers. So farmers may have the ability to qualify for some of these little tax tips and tricks. And that one in particular, some of those international types of tax, I might be able to have a conversation with their CPA or their tax team and say, have you looked at this? If it works, we might be able to get them from say 32% tax every year down to about 16% every year. That's every single year. So that frees up a significant amount of tax savings that we can put towards updating buy-sells, the financial products we want to implement. But those are the types of things that you'll get from us as well. Not just the value. We want to make sure they're maximizing what they offer as a business. So know those are going to come back to you as well, as deep as you want to go. The other thing, and I promise this is it from a tax perspective, this is still that front page of a tax return, but these are all, these little arrows, they're all sales opportunities. So the top one, line 7, that's what we're paying our officers generally. Generally, they're the owners of the business. But a conversation that we might have is, great, we're paying the owners 1.3 million in W-2 wages. Everybody feels pretty confident they can step into the shoes of the other owners. But you've got one individual there, an engineer. They have a certain set of skills that nobody else can take over. We need to make sure we have some key person coverage on them. In addition to just the buy-sell coverage, we want to have a key person conversation there. The next line down that doesn't have an arrow is actually line 8. That's what we're paying our employees generally. So do we have any key staff there as well? Any folks that maybe we should do a executive bonus to treat them specifically in a different way than others to make sure they want to stay with us? So that's kind of sale option 2. The other thing, if you're in this space, is look at line 17. That's what we're putting into a profit sharing plan or some sort of qualified plan potentially. We're paying our owners, just the owners, 1.3 million in W-2 wages. But we're socking away 36,000 into a plan. I'm pretty sure there's an opportunity there to have some qualified plan discussions. So if you do talk about that, it's not necessarily related to the value of the business, but geez, it might be a way to retain some of those key folks as well. And it might put the owners in a better position from a tax position as well. Employee benefits, we'll look at that as well. And there's a couple of other nuances there too, but generally every valuation that you do, the reason I love them is there's about 5 or so sales opportunities coming from each one outside of your typical just buy-sell coverage. So really interesting. I wanted to show you that, but no more taxes, I promise. That's it. The other things that I just want to make sure we point out too when we're doing our review is all of these items here. When we look to a business, we're looking at, how unique are their services or products? Do they have patents? What's the competition in the industry look like? Those are going to drive value. And a real unique one is social media presence. I'm sure, with the hands again, I'm sure that folks out there, if you go to a new city, you probably Google restaurants or you do Instagram or Yelp or whatever the case is. Social media is really a driver for a lot of businesses' revenue. They're the reason that you come in as a potential customer. A real interesting fact too, kind of like my Walmart truck driver. Does anybody know? I typically say, does anybody know how much one of the Kardashians makes per sponsored post to one of their social media platforms? It is fascinating. Maybe you'll change jobs. It is about $1 million per sponsored post. So if you think that social media doesn't have a place in the value of their business, it has a very significant place. And that's one area where we may say, hey, we did our due diligence. We looked through our resources to see how the business represents itself online. There's an opportunity. So maybe a way to make them more competitive with their peers if they're going to be in a sale position as well. So now that we've done our due diligence, we've crunched all the numbers, we've seen all the things that we can see, what do you actually get back from us? You'll always get back a nice report. This is one of the pages in that report. This right here is the page I love the most. The reason I love it is because this gives a snapshot of probably the top 5 ways that the IRS has consistently valued businesses. Some of them are great for certain types of businesses and others are not great. So a good example is this one right here. This is based on a manufacturing company we had come through. And ironically, their buy-sell said, and this was 2019, their buy-sell, it said, we're going to value our owner's interest at book value. That's the way we're going to do it. That's the way our parents did it when they owned the business. We're good. If we ran this manufacturing company at book value, that's a $3.5 million value, give or take. Where we would assess a value for manufacturing would really be between that excess earnings capitalization, that very center column, and the one just to the right of it, that goodwill approach. So call it right around 18 or so million. That's a far, far different than 3.5 million. So talk about a great opportunity there to say, maybe we should talk to the attorney and redraft this to make sure it's representing our business well. So we still have Thanksgiving dinner plans with our other partners. So you'll always get this, and I'll always let you know which method or methods make the most sense for their type of business and why the other ones are a little off. The other thing that I like is now that we know the value of the business, say it was around 18 or so million, we have another portion of the output that's called your cost summary. And this one actually goes to the individual ownership interest of each owner. So this owner of the business, they had a majority share, say around 80 or so percent, at 15.7 you see at the very, very top. We can have a conversation to say, great, I'm glad you're selling out of the business. If you think that next individual is going to get a loan, that's fine. You can have them do that. But can the business dedicate $3 million of revenue pre-tax to just the loan payment? Is that going to hurt the business? Are you concerned with that, given you're going to step away as kind of that founding member of the business? We can have all those discussions right off of this page. I'm going to treat myself as the bank. I'll do an installment sale. I'm selling it to my family. Have that discussion as well. Sinking fund, cash. If you run into anybody with 15.7 million of cash in the bank, I'm sure we'll figure something out for them. So feel free to give us a call on that one, but pretty rare. And then I love showing life insurance at the bottom too. This one comes with a pretty hefty premium, 340,000 roughly. But this one in particular, we can show how it does multiple things for them. So if they dedicate $1, we've also established a sinking fund. We've got kind of their private bank to some degree where we can dip into the cash value of the policy to buy that new piece of machinery to produce more hand sanitizer if that's the route they want to go. We've got the buy-sell covered. And we also have that portion of that down payment for that installment sale. So a couple of things we can do there. So I love showing that page as well. Last portion of what I also give to you as far as our output goes is I want to make sure they're aware of anything that the industry is focused on to make sure they maximize their value. So are they highlighting the things that are important? Maybe it's a new piece of machinery that makes them a step above others. Maybe it's a certain type of certificate that they've got. We certainly have those in our industry, all the CHFC, CLU, and so on. But a really, really big one for me is around key employees. If I know that the business owner is going to retain certain individuals with their business, I feel much more confident buying a business where I know that the consistency of the business is going to remain for at least the next 5 years. And that's all about people. And that leads me to one of my favorite quotes, and I think greatest opportunities with business valuation comes from this gentleman, Andrew Carnegie. He is probably, gosh, about 100 years old now, but he said, "Take away my people, leave my factories, and I'm going to have grass growing on the floors. Take away my factories, but leave my people, and I'll have new and better factories very soon." He understood the value that people have, and that's really what we want to empower our business owners to understand as well. If they want to secure the value of their business, they have to secure the folks that are making their business consistent and profitable. So that goes to your REBA discussions, your executive bonus, maybe your qualified plan, but it's really targeting the folks that they couldn't do the business without, especially if they're not going to be there. Make sure that they remain so the business is consistent for the next few years. Last little bit I'll leave you with, and then I believe we can open it up for some questions if any come to mind. I want to put you in the shoes of a potential buyer, and you have in front of you as a potential buyer 2 businesses. And I'm sure your business clients are going to be faced with this as well. They're down to the point where it's them and somebody else that is looking to be bought. Both companies in this position have strong financials. They wouldn't be there if they weren't. They've also got a great, great reputation. Again, they wouldn't be in front of that potential buyer if they weren't. But in going through this process, we also identified with your assistance, maybe there's an EPA issue. Maybe it was an old gas station at one point where the new financial advisory practice is located. I actually worked at a bank that was an old gas station at one point, and they had tanks buried underneath the old fill station. So from my perspective, if I'm business 2, I know it's a risk. I've either insured against that risk or I've taken steps to mitigate that risk, and I've made it known to the potential buyer. I feel pretty good. Next thing is, say I'm a financial advisory practice and I'm in that bank location. I know I have a lot of personal information. I know it's a potential risk to my business, and I've taken steps to either mitigate or insure against that risk. Feel pretty good there too. I've also got some key staff. I've set up a REBA. They're going to stay with me. This employee is going to stay with me for the next 5 years. Otherwise, new owner gets all that money back to find that replacement. I feel pretty good about that too. They've also got all those nice certificates, the CFPs and whatnot. They show them well online as well. If we're a buyer, I feel so much more confident buying business 2 because they know their business well. They've identified to me the risks that are present, and they've taken steps to mitigate that risk through either insurance or other measures. For me, business 2 knows what's going on with their business. Business 1 has a great business. So I would go with number 2, and that's what we want to do going through this process, is make business 2, if they are going to sell, make sure that they're the ones that get bought for top dollar too. So with that, last few things I'll leave you with before questions is, I would say think of a few folks that have had either significant changes to their business, the manufacturing types or construction types, or even restaurants as well. Think of those individuals certainly have a need to update their buy sells, certainly have a need to discover what their new post-pandemic value is. Leverage us as well. One of the things I didn't say is I am there for you through the whole process. So let me know if I can talk to you and inform you on everything as far as the business client we're working on, their CPA, their attorney, their CFO, the client itself, themselves. I'm there in an open door for you for any discussion that they'd like to have. And then, use this as kind of a jumping point too. A lot's going to change over the next few years. We've got sunset coming as far as estate taxes. Changes to tax law generally are going to sunset to pre-Trump. At least that's the thought in 2026. So some planning really should be encouraged beforehand. But with that, I have spoken a lot. So I wanted to open up with any questions that came in or anything else that I can address for the good of the group.
Well, it looks like we have one question so far from Joe. How do you get compensated to assist in this type of transaction?
That's a great question. Joe, you can pay me as much as you'd like. So the way that we work is we identified a lot of those opportunities. If there is an opportunity that Nationwide is in the space of, say it's life insurance as a risk protection tool, or whatever the case is, we would hope to just get a shot at that business. That would be how we would get compensated. So no fee to the client, no fee to you to use the service. It's really, we want to make sure that we protect that business, so they're a business that we can hopefully get their business in the future if we can't get it today. Great question.
Indeed, great question. And I see we don't have any other questions, so I think we can go ahead and end this webinar. Thank you again, Ryan. Really appreciate your time, and I hope everyone has a wonderful Thursday.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.